and welcome to the Mariya method, where inner work becomes real transformation. And today, for my first official YouTube video, I want to share my personal story and how I was able to overcome the darkest days of my life. And from the ages of 0 to 3, my mother let different men do whatever they wanted to my body in exchange for drugs. But then from the ages of 3 to 5, while being in foster care, my foster father raped me and sexually abused me often and would record it on a camera. I'm going to be giving you the Cliff Notes version just for the sake of us not being here for 20 hours, okay? My biological mother's name is Shawanya, but she changed her name to Carrie. When Carrie was around the ages of 6 or 7, I believe, she was adopted by a lady named Josephine, okay? Now, Carrie, my biological mother, has a brother named Michael. They share the same mother, but different dads. I have this handy-dandy whiteboard to help us understand really what's going on. So here we have my mother, who gave birth to me, Carrie, and my uncle Michael. They were adopted by Josephine Allen, okay? I've talked to some of the members in my biological family tree literally a couple of months ago for the first time in my life. And I found them through Ancestry. And I did Ancestry about 4 or 5 years ago. It is speculated that my biological mother, Carrie's real mother, and her youngest brother had sex and therefore created my mom. So my mom is speculated to be the outcome of incest. That is not genetically confirmed, but that is what is to be said by my biological family. Now, when she had adopted them, she was divorced and had her own biological son, Damani, who was older than my mother and my uncle. So when they grew up, they weren't as close in age, so they didn't really hang out. But my biological mom said that he was always really nice and had no complaints about him. So it's important to note that Josephine was the first African American woman at Cornell University to receive tenure, which is a huge accomplishment, obviously. So she went to the White House, she met the president, she wrote several books, and was a huge, multifaceted, successful Black woman in a small town called Ithaca, New York, in upstate New York, which is where my mother, my uncle, my sister, and I were all raised. You may be asking, why are her accomplishments important to this story? No one ever believed the truth because of her accomplishments. Another very important note to add is that she taught social work and policy analysis, amongst other things, and it's so ironic that somebody who teaches, social policies, can be so abusive. So that's another fun, addition to the story. Once Josephine adopted my biological mother, Carrie, and my uncle, the abuse started very quickly. She was neglectful. She physically, mentally, and emotionally abused them. My uncle, his entire life was in and out of juvie, in and out of jail, and I don't have much of a relationship with him, unfortunately, and I'm not exactly sure why. But my mother, Carrie, had a very difficult time coping with the trauma, so she actually ran away and eventually became a drug addict, unfortunately. She ran away to New York City, and while in New York City, she started dating a man named Stanley Velez. While dating him, my mom got pregnant and told him that I was his kid, and they named me Mariya, but the name was spelled differently. It was Marijah, with the J being silent. Due to my mother's severe drug use and dissociation in life, there are years missing from her life. So some things that she's told me have turned out to be lies, and some things are truthful. So whatever she tells me, I always take with a grain of salt because I'm not exactly sure what reality I'm getting. With my mom being pregnant, she went back to Ithaca, New York, which is about 4 hours from the city. And she was going back to seek help from family and friends to support her with this pregnancy because she was young. My godmom Angie and Carrie, my mom, have been good friends since high school. And Angie stepped up and took my mom to doctor's appointments when my mom hadn't even been to any, and gave her a place to stay while my mom got on her feet, got her food stamps, etc. And very grateful to my godmom Angie for stepping in when no one would. And my mom had an emergency C-section because the umbilical cord was wrapped around my eyes, I believe, or my neck. And she had me. She then shortly after met my sister's father. My sister and I believe, are a year and 3 months apart. So she very quickly, after me, had my sister. Unfortunately, my mom was still using drugs. I remember some very vivid memories of the ages of 0 to 3 when I was with my birth mom. I remember one time specifically, I found her on the couch with a needle in her arm, and I thought she was dead and panicked. I didn't really know, what was going on, but she was unresponsive to me. And there were other memories of me finding chocolate syrup and painting my hands all over the walls with the chocolate syrup. I remember a lot of memories that were both good and bad with my birth mom. And unfortunately, when I was 3, my sister and I were found apparently naked roaming around the highway of Ithaca, New York in the middle of winter. And if you know anything about upstate New York, it's very cold and it has a lot of snow. So obviously this raised a lot of red flags. My sister and I were put in foster care, and to my knowledge, my mother was in rehab during this time. Now, it was never conveyed to me that at the time that what was happening. I never even understood that I was in a foster home. I just thought I was visiting relatives that looked nothing like me. Oftentimes they separate siblings in foster homes, and I was really lucky to not be separated from mine. And while in the foster home, my sister and I would meet with this very mysterious older woman who appeared to me to be in her 60s. And I remember also sometimes she would bring other people, and again, nothing was truthfully conveyed to me, who they were, why they were there, why I was even in foster care. Didn't even know I was actually in foster care until I got older. On the day of the courthouse hearing, when I was 5 years old, I vividly remember my mom not being present, and this strange lady that was visiting my sister and I in the foster home was there, and a lady who they labeled as our caseworker, and who probably was the social worker. And I remember the court hearing was over, and my mom came flying into the courtroom, flying everywhere out of her purse, and she looked panicked and scared and nervous. And I remember she called for us and she was running towards us, and my sister and I reached out our arms to grasp her. I remember her hands scraping mine, and my sister and I being ripped out of her hands, and we were told we would never see her again. My sister was extremely emotional in that moment. I was more so confused. And we were not in that moment allowed to even embrace our own mother, let alone talk to her, and we hadn't seen her those 2 years of foster care. This strange old lady is now, our parent. And I'm so confused. My name was changed to Mariya. I now took on this weird lady's last name, which is Allen, and she kept my middle and other last name, Velez. Once she adopted us, told us that we needed to call her Marmy, spelled Marmie. And I found out Marmy is from the book Little Woman. That's what they call their mother. We were not allowed to call her grandma, mom, nothing but Marmy. And so Marmy would allow us to see our birth mom under visitations. And first they were monitored, and then we had a few at Marmy's house. And that came crashing and burning down one day when Marmy and my mom got into this physical altercation, and I didn't understand why my mom was calling Marmy mommy. Okay? So, mommy? That's your mom? Like, what do you mean? Come to find out, we're expanding the family tree of adoption. Okay? Let's take it back to step one. Josephine, who adopted my mother and my uncle when they were kids, now has adopted my sister and me. Yeah, let that sink in. So when she had adopted my sister and I, she had to be in her 60s. So this woman not only abused my mother and my uncle, but abused my sister and I. And again, no one believed us because of her accomplishments in my community and in the world. And of those who did believe us and knew what was going on, they silenced us. So this is why I'm also sharing my story, is to get justice and speak my truth. Because my whole life I've been silenced, and I will not be silenced anymore. This is the truth, and whoever doesn't like it doesn't want the truth being told. So my biological mom, Carrie, and I truly believe that Josephine adopted my sister and I to abuse us because she hated my mom, and she hated the fact that my mom ran away from her abuse, and this was her way of hurting my mom in the most brutal way possible. And the way that Josephine treated us is why I say this. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm not going to go into grave detail about the abuse that Josephine inflicted, because again, we'd be here all day, but I will be telling bits and pieces just to give examples. She was completely neglectful. She never said, I love you. We were not allowed to hug her. We were not allowed to show any affection. We were not allowed to be spoken unless spoken to. We were not allowed to shower on certain days or certain times unless granted permission. We were not taught how to bathe ourselves, how to brush our teeth. We oftentimes went hungry. We were not allowed to use heating during the cold winters of upstate New York. We were confined to our bedrooms and not allowed to go anywhere amongst our house. We were isolated from peers. We never had a birthday. She constantly ridiculed us. She constantly told us that we would never amount to anything, that we were going to be just like our drug-addicted mother. She told us that no one would ever love us, that we were not worthy, that God does not like ugly, insinuating that not only am I ugly, but I'm poor behaved. She used God as an excuse for punishment. She would physically abuse us in very peculiar ways. One being, she would clap my ears until I'm almost fainting. She would hit us with belts and a wooden paddle like this large. There was definitely blood drawn at times. She would laugh in your face when physically, emotionally, mentally, and verbally taunting you. There are scars on my body to this day from physical abuse from this person. She made us not only eat moldy food, but drink moldy milk. And when we would try to throw it up, she would force feed our throw up down our throat. She would lock my sister in the garage when having guests over because my sister was a rebel. She took the door off my sister's hinges because we're not allowed to close doors in the house. She would get in these moods that were caused by I'm not sure what, but would inflict pain on us due to her own anger in the moment that had nothing to do with us, but we were her punching bags in every form. And her punishments were not, did not make sense, okay? It would be a random Tuesday, and because a bird was singing, she would decide to hit me. She would decide to bully me. She would decide to belittle me, taunt me, and while doing all of these things, laugh in my face. And when I tell you, I truly believe this woman not only is an extreme narcissist, I believe she is a sociopath, and I believe she has multiple personalities. In public, she appeared to be quiet spoken. She never raised her voice above barely a whisper. She was always well put together, well dressed, very highly educated. She was racist, but not at the same time. It was very odd. She was racist towards white people and certain black people, but had white friends and black friends and was black herself. It was very confusing. Again, she completely manipulated and abused God as a reason to abuse my sister and I. And other forms of abuse were washing our hair but drowning us in the bathtub at the same time. She would lock us out, barely dressed or even naked, during the winter to show us punishment, almost to the point of getting frostbite. She would lock my sister and I in the car for long periods of time during the winter with no heat, just so that we didn't embarrass her in public. We were not allowed to wash our clothes unless granted permission. We were not allowed to speak unless spoken to, and children did not have opinions. So I was silenced my entire life. I was not allowed to have a personality. I was not allowed to be a child. If you took a deep inhale and exhale, you could get beat for that because that is a sign of disrespect. I am a very expressive person, and me just expressing myself by moving my eyes around is disrespectful, which would mean I would get beat. Anything and everything was a causation for abuse in Josephine's eyes, and she truly enjoyed inflicting any type of pain that she did, and that is a sick individual. And why I say multiple personalities, and I know mental health is nothing to joke about. I truly believe this about this person because she is a true monster. But to the public, she was one personality. She was Josephine. She was this woman who wouldn't even hurt a fly. But behind closed doors, the only person that we truly knew Josephine to be was Marmy. And that was the monster only my sister, my mother, my uncle, and I ever saw. Now you may be asking, do you think her biological son ever saw that side of her? No, I don't. And my mom and my uncle truly don't think he ever saw that side of her either. Truly because I think it's her biological son. Josephine's constant reminder that we would end up a druggie like our mother, that was another reason for her to minimize us as human beings. My nervous system was never regulated. I was always in fight or flight mode. terrified of Josephine, and on the days that we never even saw Josephine because she lived on we had a 2-story home, she was always in her room, which was like a second living room in our home, and she had her own food stash down there. Those were actually the days that I was the happiest because that meant I wasn't going to be abused, but at the same time we were being neglected and not fed. We never had lunch either or breakfast, which is truly sad. I went starving most of my childhood. And if we ever even asked to have a lunch or to be given something, it was, do you think I have the money for that? But there were definitely times when I was sleeping and she would pull me out of bed by my feet and just beat me for no reason. Why I say multiple personalities is because it would switch as fast as a light when that front door closes. That front door closes, Marmy's coming out. And her voice is loud, it echoes, it's evil, and she is always angry. And like I said, you would be walking on eggshells through life, not knowing when you're going to be hit next, not knowing when next you're going to be told you will never amount to anything or that you were never worthy of love. And it was an exhausting youth. I was never able to be a child. Hence this sociopath thing. Obviously, if you're so well at blending in socially, but behind closed doors, you're another monster. Yeah. Complete sociopath. And the scariest thing about Josephine Marmy is that to this day I have no idea what her motive behind the abuse ever was, because I can tell you right now, she has never taken accountability or apologized for anything. In fact, she tells my sister and I that we made everything up and it was all in our head. So another tactic of Josephine to isolate us further from human connection was that she would tell anybody who would listen to her that my sister and I were the worst behaved children to ever exist, and that she was the victim and she was so stressed out and she didn't know what to do because we were so poorly behaved. Now, was I a perfect human being growing up? Damn near it, because I truly believe that if I was perfect, that meant that Marmy would love me and accept me, and that obviously never came to fruition. It was just another tactic for outsiders looking in to think that Josephine is the perfect mother. She has taken these orphans in to love them and give them the life they never had, which in some circumstances are correct, but were never worth the trauma that I had to endure. She never bought us the simple necessities you need to take care of a human being. And that was just another form of neglect. So we received a lot of clothes from Salvation Army, from hand-me-downs, gifts from other people, which thank God. And eventually, I got a job and started working to provide for myself for both clothes and food. But, it's very odd to grow up in the way that I did because I thought everyone experienced what I experienced until high school, and I started to realize there was something deeply wrong with my situation. I would be lying if I said that everything was bad about Josephine. Now, she put my sister and I in private piano and violin lessons. She took us to church every week. She would sleep in church, but she made sure we were in youth group, choir, acolytes. We were in Girl Scouts. I did sports. She also got a sabbatical in South Africa in both Bloemfontein and Johannesburg. So my sister and I were able to go and live in a different country for, I believe, 1.5 to 2 years, which was truly phenomenal and amazing. Yes, the abuse continued in South Africa. Just because we're in a different country doesn't mean she's changing, I wish. But it was really, truly an amazing experience to go to school and live in a different country. Another amazing thing that Josephine did teach my sister and I was proper manners and etiquette, especially table manners and etiquette. Anytime we were given dinner, which again was not a guarantee, I was taught to properly set the dining room table and also how to do the dishes and clean. I was cleaning Josephine's house often, and I actually have OCD because that's my brain's way of coping with all of the trauma, and trying to regulate and organize things is how I stay in control. And I've gotten better as time's gone by, but there's just always a part of me that needs to feel in control by, having things a certain way in terms of being clean. Now, my sister and I were always polar opposites growing up, and she definitely was the rebel, and I can thank the Lord that my sister was a lot stronger and more brave than me, because she defended me physically a lot of the time against Josephine. And I thank her immensely to this day for taking the brunt of a lot of the physical trauma. But my sister was very much also a bully towards me, and we did not get along, and I wanted a very close bond, because I would think that in a situation of repetitive trauma you could at least rely on your sibling, but that wasn't the case for my sister and I, and to this day we still have a on and off relationship, and I hope to, get to a better place, and, it is what it is. Growing up, I did not have a TV, and we were allowed to listen to the radio. We were only allowed to listen to NPR, National Public Radio. And the only other thing we could listen to were our repertoires of music. So when you're doing private lessons on the Suzuki method with piano and violin, they have pre-recorded songs that you're learning, and they believe that if you listen to the song over and over and over again, you can learn the song better. And so we could listen to those. So I, as a kid, was bored a lot of the time, and I read a lot of books, and that was actually my escape from reality. I played with dolls until I was about a sophomore or sophomore, probably in high school, because that was also a form of escapism for me. I started to collect bugs around my home, and I would name them, and I would call them my pets, and I would talk to them from the ages of 5 on, because God was put so heavily on our lives, and to worship God and to follow the religion so closely, we were forced to pray every night. And I would get on my hands and knees on the edge of my bed, and I would pray to God, and I would look at the stars, and I begged God to take my life. At 5 years old, mind you, to take my life, because I was not loved, I was not worthy of love, and I didn't understand why I could not see my mom, and why this new weird lady was abusing, taunting, and acting insane for no reason towards me and my sister. Now, mind you, it was not explained to my sister and I that Josephine had also adopted my mom and my uncle until later on in life. So that was like a really big, crazy moment of realization for me too, to understand that. Also, at the age of 5, when I was adopted, it was court ordered to receive counseling, and I don't believe counseling ever really did anything for me throughout my youth. And they also ordered family counseling, and that was actually my least favorite, because Josephine would sit up in that family counseling and just lie and lie and lie and make up all these stories, and the counselors believed her, and it was just honestly. And I really thought that therapy was such a waste of time, and I eventually refused to go back because I was tired of listening to lies, and I was tired of the counselors believing the lies of Josephine and not even giving us a chance to really state our point of view. And that was really upsetting. Josephine's family mostly all resided in Georgia, and we would visit them during Christmas time and during summers. And eventually, as we got older, we were allowed to stay with them during the summertime, and that was actually my favorite time because we were allowed to watch TV for the first time. We were allowed to eat junk food and like not go starving. So I was over consuming to the extreme for sure on both TV and food. And we did, schooling. We did like summer school kind of with my aunt, and we still practiced piano and violin. And we really, really enjoyed going to spend summers away from Marmee. As I got older and I started to learn that Josephine was abusing my sister and I started to grow resentment for Josephine. And I started to completely lack respect for a woman that in the public's eye is one way and then in private is a completely different person. And to this day, I'm flabbergasted by how well she is an actor. And what's so sad is despite all of the abuse, I longed and would do anything for her to just love me and accept me or give me a damn hug. We were never allowed to do those things, and I so badly wanted her approval, and I would do anything for her approval, for her to just love me, to a point where I started to turn on my own sister, and Josephine would actually pin my sister and I against each other, which again I truly believe was another tactic of isolating us. And as we got older, those inconsistent meals started completely vanishing. So at the age of 15, I started working at a place called Wegmans, which is a grocery store. I was a cashier, and with that money, I bought food and clothing and a phone. As I got older, I started working at Chipotle, and that was another amazing way for me to get free food and provide for myself. And I vividly remember coming home with my food, and she was angry that I didn't bring her any, and she took a handful of it and slapped me across the face with it. And she also took a dish that had dirty pasta water and sauce in it, and she dumped the entire thing on my head for no given reason. She would purposely lock my sister and I out of the house for no given reason. She would purposely leave my sister and I places and not pick us up from places or be hours late. We were never a priority to her. We were never a concern to her. If we were sick, she did not give us medicine. She didn't care. And the thing is, then why go out of your way to adopt children, right? What's the point? Oh, right. But from the outside looking in, it looks great that you're doing all this hospitable work, right? I also think that all of the good things that Josephine did, such as, the piano and the violin and the Girl Scouts and the church and all that, were just more fronts to the public eye as to all of the accomplishments of not only of Josephine, but also of her children, and how we're all such a multifaceted family. So how could anyone believe that anything horrible was going on behind closed doors? I did verbally fight back sometimes, but even then I was so terrified to do so. My junior year of high school, I got a call from my aunt the one that we would stay with during the summertime, who I really, really loved and saw as my safe space growing up until she literally betrayed me and backstabbed me too. So, shocker. But she called me one day before school, before I was getting on the bus, and she told me that Josephine had, I believe, stage 3 lymph node cancer. And the reason Josephine got stage 3 lymph node cancer was because of me. Because I was such a bad child that she got cancer. Now, as a kid, I believed it. I didn't know any different. But as an adult, I can almost laugh. Because what? What do you, there's no logic behind that. But because I gave her cancer, somehow, some way, we were being kicked out. Where? I don't know. We're being homeless? That's great. We were too old to go back into foster care. So where are we going to go? The streets?